Hey, we're saints. Welcome to our Crucifixional live stream. Father Chris here. Glad to have you beautiful people with us on this glorious day. I have been asked by a group at Arizona State University. It's called the Political History and Leadership Initiative to give a presentation in a couple weeks. And the title of the talk they asked me to speak on is the following: Are modernity and classical religions compatible? Well, that was a mouthful. And as I thought about it, I was like, what am I going to say about all of that kind of stuff? And I came up with this answer. First, the problem is, what is modernity? It's a word that, has been labeled for the generation around the time of the Renaissance, and ultimately it means whatever is modern at that time. So post-Renaissance, that was modernity. And modernity kept getting bumped, if you will. Some say that it ended 1945, with the Second War. We're now in post-modernity. Some say no, modernity started after the Second War and it goes to today. Either way, the way I'm going to define it for this presentation is modernity is the modern times in which we live. It's compatible with a set of beliefs or ideals or ideas through which a society and a culture live and navigate their days. So this is kind of like basically a fancy way to say that modernity is the modern times in which we live. So now the question is, modernity and classical traditional religions compatible? And my answer is they are compatible because modernity teaches lies. I think the modern narrative is full of falsehood and untruth. And classical religion's response, her compatibility, is to stand as an antithesis to that. In other words, that for our perspective as Christians, we are supposed to speak truth. Indeed, in Proverbs chapter 12, the Lord even tells us how much he hates lies and loves truth. He says in chapter 12:22, lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who act faithfully, and in Hebrew, truthfully, they are his delight, right? Like, he cannot stand lying lips, but faithful, truthful people who behave faithfully and truthfully, they are a delight to the Lord. And I think the responsibility that warrior saints have are to live as men and women of truth, who speak true things, who live truly in their own lives, authentically real, however you want to say this, not under any pretense, not with any masks or under any guise, but that we are what you see. Not to be too cliche, but that saying that what you see is what you get, right? In other words, I'm not sneaking around, or I've got no subterfuge going on. I'm not trying to pull any angles or manipulate. And I know that we all do that in our lives. Sometimes we get carried away with it and it just happens. Myself included, have probably acted untruthfully in my life. But as warrior saints, we are to fight, to strive every single moment to be men and women of truth. Now, to do that sometimes comes at a cost, right? Because when you're truthful, sometimes you can get some backlash, especially like you think about in the modernity that's out there. One of the things, hopefully we're getting past it, but one of the things that's out there is called cancel culture, right? So like when somebody would say something that another person would disagree with, they would be attacked, assaulted, and canceled, right? Like, in other words, famous people would be removed from the public sphere. And even you and I, like, even thinking about a young teenage girl in the high school age who gets into it with another teenage girl, and the other girl goes and gossips and spreads all this word, and now this one kid is canceled, right? Like, it can happen anywhere. There are consequences for speaking truth, and sometimes they're painful, but they are also beautiful, because you will know that in your heart and in your mind you have stood for something, right? Like, at least at one point in your life, you can say, I stood for something that mattered. I stood for something that was true. Yeah, I took a few lumps because of it, but I can say that I was truthful, that I spoke truly, that I acted truly, and I lived truly, at least in that moment. Then the challenge becomes, all right, how do I repeat that? Right? Not to be too cheesy, but rinse and repeat. How do I become a man or woman who is constantly pushing for truth, right? Now, that's not an easy thing to do because, like I said, there are those forces out there that may choose to cancel. The reward, however, is that you find fulfillment, and ultimately you find that peace in your heart to know you done did the right thing. Now, tomorrow we're going to shift gears and talk about when we get involved in these, modernity disputes. What's really a value? What value are we going to assign to something? We'll talk about that tomorrow, but for the time being, let it say this. In order for us to be able to be confident enough or brave enough or well-versed enough to speak that truth in a modern context within the modern narrative, we sometimes need a little bit of guidance, a little bit of help, because you know what? It ain't always clear. Sometimes, because it's chaotic out there, right? Like, I don't know which way to turn sometimes. Left, right, up, down, I don't even know. And so sometimes we need a little bit of help and a little bit of guidance. You're in luck, because the Warrior Saints Ministry does exactly that. We're here to help guide, to teach with practical, biblical guidance, teaching to help us overcome the chaos that is out there in that modern narrative, in that modern landscape, so that we can arrive at what our heart really desires, a sense of peace. All you need to do is, number one, visit warriorsaints.org. That's our website. Number two, subscribe to the Way of the Warrior Saint. Slide down the page, about halfway down. Number three, watch videos, change life. It's all there. At warriorsaints.org, we have all of our teachings that are going to help us with practical, biblical guidance, overcome the chaos, and find our peace. Love you, beautiful people. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about the value that we assign to problems. And as always, until then, keep walking on the way of the Warrior Saint.